September 27, 1941. North Atlantic, 180 miles west of Iceland. Spray hammers the conning tower of U-552 as Oberleutnant zur See Hans Keller braces himself against the rail, peering into the churning gray wilderness. The wind is a living thing, howling, clawing, tearing across the steel skin of the Type V sea submarine. The smell of diesel, cold brine, and wet canvas fills the air. Below him, the watch crew shivers inside heavy oilskin jackets, each man fighting the same creeping sense of exhaustion that stalks every U-boat patrol. A shout rises from the bridge hatch. Funkrum meldet. Radio message from BDU. Keller ducks below into the tight metal throat of the hatch, climbing down into the dim red-lit corridor. The submarine seems to inhale and exhale around him, pistons clattering, bilge pumps throbbing, the ever-present hiss of stale, recycled air. In the radio room, radioman Matthias Vogel holds a decoded slip in one trembling hand. "It's odd, sir." Keller snatches the paper. A single line from headquarters. American shipyards claim mass production of new cargo vessels. Liberty ships. Design primitive and ugly. No cause for concern. Keller scoffs. Ugly? The Americans are bragging about ugly ships now. Vogel shrugs. It says they're welding them instead of riveting. Simple construction. Supposedly faster, but nothing impressive. The boat's commander, Captain Lieutenant Erich Topp, appears in the doorway, wiping condensation from his brow. "Let me see." He reads the line, then chuckles, a dry, humorless sound shaped by too many months at sea. Mass-produced ships? What are they building Volkswagens for the ocean? The men laugh, quiet, bitter laughter that barely rises above the thrum of the diesels. To the U-boat crews, merchant ships are prey. They are faceless shapes on the horizon, slow, clumsy, terrified things. The idea that America is throwing together something even cruder and uglier sounds like a joke. Yet Keller glances back at the radio slip. Something about it unsettles him. Not the message itself, but the tone. BDU rarely comments on Allied shipbuilding unless it matters. Topp folds the paper and slips it into his pocket. Forget it. Whatever they're welding together over there, will send to the bottom like all the rest. But even as he speaks, the hull groans with the swell, and a cold wave breaks over the bow, rattling the plates. No ship is truly insignificant in the Atlantic. Every ton of steel matters. Every vessel sunk starves Britain. Every vessel launched keeps her alive. And in shipyards across the American coast, far from the rolling misery of the North Atlantic, a quiet industrial revolution is beginning. The U-boat men don't know it yet, but this single radio message is the first hint of an enemy they cannot torpedo, outmaneuver, or intimidate. An enemy measured not in guns or armor, but in time. September 27, 1941. Wilmington, North Carolina. While U-552 claws through the North Atlantic, a different kind of storm brews thousands of miles away, one made not of wind and water, but of sparks, rivet guns, and roaring steel. Floodlights blaze across the North Carolina Shipbuilding Company yard, turning the Cape Fear River into a shimmering ribbon of white. The night shift swarms the docks like an army of ants. Welders in leather aprons crouch beside massive steel plates, sparks showering down in bright orange arcs that hiss as they hit damp concrete. Cranes groan as they swing prefabricated hull sections into place, each the size of a townhouse. In the middle of this controlled chaos stands Rosie Dyer, a 23-year-old welder with soot on her cheeks and determination in her eyes. She adjusts her heavy mask, grips the welding torch, and leans into her work as another shower of molten metal cascades along the seam. Section 14 locking in, a foreman shouts from the catwalk above. Dyer lifts her visor, squinting at the massive hull taking shape before her. Just days earlier, these pieces had been scattered across the yard like a metal graveyard. Now they fit together with uncanny precision. Prefabrication, once a radical idea, has transformed shipbuilding from craftsmanship into assembly. These ships are not elegant. They are not graceful. They are not meant to inspire awe. They are meant to exist. Nearby, Chief Engineer Walter Reed wipes sweat from his brow despite the cool autumn night. The man looks more like a professor than a shipbuilder, round glasses, thin mustache, shirt sleeves rolled up past his elbows. He carries a clipboard filled with measurements, deadlines, and sketches full of last-minute modifications. He steps beside the hull, running a hand along the rough welded line. "Perfect doesn't win wars," he mutters. "Quantity does." Reed's assistant jogs up to him, breathless. "Sir, the yard superintendent wants to confirm. Are we still on track for the 5-day launch demonstration?" Reed checks his watch. "Day 4, hour 9. Tell him yes. We're not slipping a single minute." The assistant blinks. "Sir, with respect, ships don't launch in 5 days." Reed gives him a thin smile. "They do now." He looks out across the river, watching the reflection of the half-completed Liberty ship ripple across the water. "Let the U-boats laugh. They'll run out of torpedoes before we run out of ships." A series of air horns blast, the shift change. Hundreds of workers file in, lunch pails under their arms, thermoses slung at their sides. They move with a quiet urgency, exchanging nods but wasting no words. For them, this is more than a job. Every ship launched is another lifeline to soldiers overseas. Another chance for Britain to survive. Another refusal to let tyranny choke the world. The Liberty ship's skeleton towers above them, rough-edged but proud. Welders replace riveters. Assembly replaces artistry. Time replaces tradition. And somewhere in the dark Atlantic, German submariners still laugh at the idea. But the riverfront knows a truth the U-boats will learn too late. An ugly ship that arrives is worth more than a beautiful one at the bottom of the ocean. The stopwatch continues ticking toward day 5. October 10, 1941. Mid-Atlantic, convoy HX-153. The sea is a heavy, rolling plain of black, the moon smothered behind thick cloud. The sound of the ocean is a dull, endless roar, broken only when the sharp metallic click of U-552's periscope breaks the surface. Inside the cramped attack center, red lamps cast long shadows across tired faces. Captain Lieutenant Erich Topp grips the periscope handles, his eye pressed hard to the scope. Mark bearing 280. Range 1,200 meters. His voice is steady, but there's tension underneath, a coil ready to strike. Beside him, Oberleutnant Hans Keller flips through recognition manuals, the pages dog-eared and smudged from months of damp fingers. Convoy heading north-northeast. 5 escorts, mostly flowers. He pauses. Merchant silhouettes are standard. Tankers, colliers, tramp steamers. Keller stops. Tilts his head. "What's that one?" Topp rotates the periscope slightly. The mist parts, revealing a bulky, slab-sided ship, boxy hull, wide beam, funnel forward, deck houses spaced like an afterthought. No grace. No curves. It looks like someone forged a freighter out of spare barn parts. Keller flips pages faster. I don't see this profile." Topp lowers the periscope, just an inch, eyes narrowing. "Ugly little thing, isn't it?" Radioman Vogel leans in. "Sir, could that be one of the American ships BDU mentioned? A Liberty ship?" Keller snorts. "Impossible. Those weren't supposed to be here yet." But the silhouette stays stubbornly in view, unmistakable in its simplicity. Topp raises the periscope again. Whatever it is, it's slow. 30 feet of sheer slab along the hull. Look at it. Built like a cattle barge. His smirk flickers. Easiest torpedo of the night. He straightens up. Flood tubes 1 and 2. The torpedo room crew moves instantly. The boat vibrates as seawater rushes into the tube housings. Men wipe their palms on their trousers. Sweat beads on foreheads despite the cold. Topp glances at Keller. "What did BDU say? Welded construction?" "Yes, sir. Welded instead of riveted. Quicker but weaker. Cheap ships." "Cheap ships sink just as well." Topp turns back to the periscope. Set depth 6 meters. Impact pistol. On the surface, oblivious to the predator below, the Liberty ship plows forward at 10 knots. Crewmen cluster on the bridge wings, coats flapping in the wind, eyes scanning for periscopes they cannot see. This ship, brand new, barely a month old, has no idea it is being watched. Topp whispers, "Fire 1." A muffled thud. The boat jolts. The torpedo streaks outward. "Fire 2." Another thud. Another jolt. Inside U-552, the control room goes silent except for the ticking of the stopwatch in Keller's hand. Every man listens for the same thing. The distant bloom of an explosion. The seconds stretch like wire. 20 seconds. No sound. 30. Still nothing. Keller frowns. "Sir?" Topp grips the periscope handles even tighter. "Hold." 40 seconds. Nothing. A dull, distant crack reverberates through the hull. Not an explosion, too soft, too short. Topp blinks. That's not a detonation. Keller stares at the manual as if it personally betrayed him. Did the torpedoes fail? A second crack, sharper this time. Machinist's mate Kruger murmurs. That sounded like metal fracturing. Topp's expression hardens. "Surface. Now." The order echoes through the boat. Ballast tanks blow. The hull groans as the U-boat rockets upward. The bow punches through the surface in a spray of white water. Crewmen scramble onto the bridge, binoculars raised. And there, half a mile away, the Liberty ship is listing slightly to port, smoke curling from her midsection. But she is still moving. Still alive. And something is wrong with her hull. Keller leans over the rail. "Main got..." Look at the weld lines. Under the moonlight, the ship's side looks like a cracked eggshell, weld seams splitting, plates bending outward as if the torpedoes didn't blow them apart but ripped them along their weakest points. Topp lowers his binoculars. The wind whips his coat, but he barely feels it. "Cheap ships," he mutters. "Maybe too cheap." The Liberty ship limps onward, stubbornly refusing to die. Below, Keller feels an unease he cannot explain. A ship this simple, this ugly, should not be here yet, should not survive even a partial hit. And yet it sails on. Convoy escorts begin turning toward the disturbance. Searchlights crackle to life. The U-boat crew feels the danger rising. But Keller can't look away from the wounded freighter. Because he knows, deep down, they haven't seen the last of these ugly American ships. If the rumored production speed is real, there will be hundreds, then thousands. And the Atlantic is only so wide. September 28, 1941. Wilmington, North Carolina. Day 5. Dawn breaks over the Cape Fear River in a wash of gold and pale blue, turning the shipyard cranes into towering silhouettes that loom like metal giants over their newborn creation. Fog clings to the water, swirling around the massive hull of the Liberty ship, Hull 440, now fully assembled, painted, and rigged in a mere 5 days. A crowd has gathered. Workers in stained overalls. Navy observers in pressed uniforms. Local officials with clipboards and coffee cups they haven't touched. Reporters holding bulky cameras. Everyone is bleary-eyed, but the atmosphere vibrates with something electric, anticipation mixed with disbelief. On the dock, Chief Engineer Walter Reed stands with hands clasped behind his back, shoulders straight despite 40 hours without sleep. His assistant, Mark Sheridan, hovers anxiously beside him, eyes darting across the hull. "She's actually ready," Sheridan whispers. Reed doesn't look away from the ship. "Of course she's ready. But, sir, the weld lines are rough," Reed finishes. "And functional. We're not making ornaments for a governor's lawn. This ship carries food, fuel, ammunition. Beauty doesn't keep sailors alive." Sheridan swallows, nodding. The yard superintendent strides over. "Reed, Navy Board wants confirmation. Is this truly a 5-day construction? No cheating. No pre-assembled hull stored somewhere hidden." Reed's jaw tightens. "You've watched every hour of work. Piece by piece. Plate by plate. Prefabrication, modular assembly. This is the future. Britain doesn't need poetry. It needs steel." A whistle shrieks. Workers along the slipway move into position, knocking out the final wooden braces, securing launch lines, guiding cables. The Liberty ship looms above them, ungainly, square, stubborn-looking. More warehouse than warship. Reed steps forward, resting a hand on the cold hull. "You ugly miracle," he murmurs. Up on the christening platform, Rosie Dyer climbs the steps with trembling hands. She's never been this high above the yard before. She's used to welding seams in the shadows, not standing before hundreds of faces. Walter Reed insisted she christen the ship, said she'd welded more feet of steel than any two men in the yard combined. A Navy officer nods politely as she approaches. "Miss Dyer, when you break the bottle, give it a good swing. These ships deserve all the luck they can get." Dyer glances at the jagged welds along the bow and wonders if luck is truly all they need. The shipyard loudspeakers crackle. All personnel stand clear, preparing for launch. Dockworkers pull wedges free. Ropes tighten. The river awaits. Dyer raises the champagne bottle. Her voice shakes. "I christen the SS Patrick Henry." She swings. The bottle shatters, spraying foam across the steel. A cheer erupts from the crowd. Movement. The Liberty ship groans, shifts, and begins sliding down the greased wooden ways. Slowly at first, like some ancient beast waking from slumber. Then faster. Faster still. Men yank back from the rails as the 14,000-ton hull roars past, sparks shooting from the guide's shoes. The ship hits the river with a thunderous splash that sends waves rolling across the yard. Spray drenches half the spectators. Reporters shield their cameras. The hull tilts, everyone holds their breath, then steadies, settling upright in the water as if it has always belonged there. Reed exhales for the first time in minutes. 5 days. Unthinkable days. And the ship floats. Behind him, a Navy captain mutters to another officer, "If they can do this once, they can do it 100 times." Reed hears him, and he knows it's true. But what he does not know, not yet, is that this exact demonstration will ripple across the Atlantic. German intelligence will intercept the news. BDU will issue nervous bulletins. U-boat commanders who once laughed at crude welding seams will begin calculating torpedo inventories with fresh dread. Because a ship sunk is meaningless if 2 more replace it the next week. And this ship, this boxy, awkward, unapologetically ugly ship, is the first real proof that America intends to fight the Battle of the Atlantic with the one weapon Germany cannot outmatch: time itself. As the SS Patrick Henry drifts into the river channel, Walter Reed places a hand over his heart. "Let them laugh," he whispers. "We'll drown them in steel." January 14, 1942. Loya, France. U-boat Pen, Karaman 2. The Atlantic wind howls through the cavernous submarine bunker, echoing off massive concrete walls as though the sea itself is crying out in warning. Floodlights cast long reflections across slick floors stained with oil and seawater. U-boats rest in their pens like steel predators, scarred, weary, but still lethal. Oberleutnant Hans Keller steps off U-552's gangplank with a hollow look in his eyes. 3 months ago, he had stood on the bridge laughing about ugly American freighters. Now he carries a small folder of reconnaissance photos, images that have kept him awake for nights. Captain Lieutenant Erich Topp waits for him near the briefing room door, smoking a thin cigarette. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Keller hands him the folder. Topp opens it. His face stiffens. Inside are aerial shots taken by FW-200 Condor patrol aircraft, rows of Liberty ships crammed into American shipyards. Dozens half-built on the ways. Dozens more fitting out. A swarm of identical hulls lined up with machine-like precision. Keller speaks quietly. "It's not just one yard. Baltimore, Portland, Richmond, California. They're all doing it. Hundreds of ships at once." Topp flips through the photos faster, as though speed will change what he sees. It doesn't. "These can't all be Liberty ships," he mutters. "They are, sir." A naval engineer approaches, salutes, and places a telegram on the table beside them. Topp reads it. His jaw tightens. Reported launch of Liberty ship in 5 days. Repeat, 5 days. Production expected to increase. Keller swallows. "We damaged one in October. It split along the weld seams but kept moving. They're ugly. They're brittle. They're rushed." Topp raises an eyebrow. "But they float." Keller nods. "And when one sinks, 10 more take its place." A voice calls them into the briefing chamber. Inside, an officer from B2 slaps a map of the Atlantic onto the table. Red lines trace shipping routes. Blue circles indicate convoy losses. And black X's, placed by German intelligence, mark shipyards launching Liberty ships. "We underestimated American industrial capacity," the officer says bluntly. "The English call these vessels ugly ducklings. We called them jokes." He pauses. "We are not laughing now." Topp folds his arms. "What's command's expectation?" The officer exhales slowly, as though stating the truth pains him. "Germany must sink 700,000 tons of shipping each month to starve Britain." His finger taps a picture of the first Liberty ship, the SS Patrick Henry. "The Americans intend to build more than we can sink." Silence thickens the room. Keller speaks first. "We'll adapt." The officer shakes his head. "You cannot outdive a factory." A subtle tremor runs through Keller's spine. February 2, 1942. Mid-Atlantic. Convoy on 63. Wind, asterisk asterisk. Atop U-552's conning tower, Topp stares at a convoy so large it stretches into the fog. 20 merchant ships at least, most of them with the unmistakable blocky silhouettes of Liberty ships. They move like a herd of steel buffalo across the endless dark plain. Keller climbs up beside him. "How many do you count?" "Too many." Below, the inexperienced new helmsman, Stefan Eberhardt, murmurs into the voice pipe. "Do we have enough torpedoes for them all, sir?" Topp doesn't answer. Because the truth is obvious. The Battle of the Atlantic is no longer a hunt. It is a race, and Germany is falling behind. He orders the periscope raised briefly. Green-lit reflections ripple across the water. The convoy's escorts, newer, tougher, faster, crisscross the formation like wolves guarding a herd. Gone are the early war days of helpless, isolated freighters. These ships may be ugly, but they are never alone. Keller watches the line of Liberty ships, each one thundering through the waves with painful lack of grace. "They weren't built to be pretty," he says. "Or strong. Or fast." Topp lowers the periscope. "No," he says. "They were built to be possible." A klaxon blares. The escorts are turning. Searchlights sweep across the water. Topp barks the order, "Crash dive." The men scramble below. The Atlantic swallows the U-boat once more. But even as U-552 sinks into the deep, Topp knows the truth. A submarine can strike. A submarine can hide. But it cannot stop a relentless tide of steel born every 5 days in American shipyards. And somewhere back in North Carolina, Rosie Dyer is already welding the ribs of another Liberty ship. And another. And another. The ugly ships the U-boats once laughed at are multiplying. And for the first time in the war, Keller feels the enemy's shadow not in the form of destroyers or planes, but in the unstoppable rhythm of American industry. The tide is turning. Not with explosions, but with production. March 3, 1943. Belfast Lock, Northern Ireland. Snowflakes drift across the water like drifting ashes as the early morning fog clings stubbornly to the gray coastline. A Liberty ship, fresh from the U.S. East Coast, glides into the harbor under tow, its hull still streaked with salt and soot. The ship's bow creaks as it cuts through the frigid chop. Its weld seems harsh and unapologetic in the wan morning light. Standing on the pier, Lieutenant Commander Alan McCurdy of the Royal Navy tugs his greatcoat tighter around his shoulders. His breath fogs the air as he studies the approaching vessel. Behind him, cranes and cargo teams wait like an orchestra for a conductor's cue. "Another Liberty?" a petty officer mutters, stepping beside him. "Aye," McCurdy replies. "Third one this week." The petty officer whistles. "Thought they were churning them out quick, but this is something else." McCurdy's eyes trace the ship's forward deck, where American sailors wave half-frozen greetings. "This one took 7 days, I hear. 7 days to build a ship. Madness." The tugs ease the freighter alongside the quay. Dockhands throw lines to the American crew, who catch them with stiff, red fingers. Engines rumble across the harbor as cranes begin to swing into motion. McCurdy steps forward, offering a handshake to the Liberty ship's captain, Richard L. Morrison, a tall, wiry man in a salt-crusted pea coat. Long crossing? McCurdy asks. Morrison lets out a humorless laugh. Long enough. U-boats shadowed us halfway across. Pack of would have hit us too, but he glances back toward the ship as if speaking too loudly might jinx something. We hit the fog. Thick as soup. Burned bunker oil for 2 days waiting it out. And the U-boats? Blind. Morrison shrugs. Blind and angry. Could almost hear him swearing through the mist. McCurdy guides him toward the quay office as winches begin lifting cargo crates from the hold, tin, grain, canvas, aircraft parts. Each Liberty ship arrives stuffed with something Britain desperately needs. They're saying the Germans call these ships ugly, McCurdy remarks. Morrison grins. Ugly? Sure. But ugly floats. Ugly carries the fight. And ugly can be replaced faster than a U-boat can reload. As they walk, McCurdy nods toward the naval chart room. Come on. There's something you ought to see. Inside, heaters click softly while condensation drips from the tall windows. A massive Atlantic map covers the center table, bristling with colored pins. Red for ships lost. Green for ships arrived. Black for U-boats sighted. McCurdy gestures at a line of new green pins stretching from New York to Liverpool. Convoy SE-118. Last month. He taps the cluster. 14 Liberty ships made the crossing. All 14 arrived. Morrison raises his eyebrows. All, McCurdy repeats. The escorts say every time the U-boats down one, another 2 seem to appear a week later. Never saw anything like it. The American captain rests his hands on the map, studying the pins with a slow, dawning understanding. This war, Morrison murmurs, it's become an assembly line. McCurdy nods. And the Germans? They're starting to realize they can't torpedo an assembly line. Outside, bells ring and cranes groan. Cargo slams into wooden pallets. Workers shout to one another across the icy harbor. But out at sea, beyond the fog, beyond the horizon, the wolves of the Kriegsmarine are gathering. And for every Liberty ship that arrives in Belfast, there are U-boats hunting with growing desperation. Tonight, under the black Atlantic sky, another confrontation is coming. One the U-boats can't afford to lose. March 4, 1943. Mid-Atlantic. Convoy SE-122. Night presses down like a physical weight, thick, absolute, suffocating. Clouds blot out the stars. The moon is only a memory. The only glow comes from the faint blue lamps on the bridge wings of a Liberty ship, the SS John Walker, plowing through heavy seas with the rest of the convoy. Spray crashes over the bow. Wind claws at the rigging. The engines throb deep in the ship's belly, a steady, stubborn heartbeat. Out beyond the fringe of the convoy, something else moves. Something quieter. Something patient. Inside U-230, Captain Lieutenant Heinz Bohm leans over the chart table, jaw clenched hard enough to ache. The diesel engines rumble as his boat cruises just beneath the surface, periscope depth. Hydrophones report multiple contacts ahead, his soundman whispers. Slow speed merchant signatures. Bohm nods once. Convoy. The navigator marks bearings. The engineer checks battery levels. Every man aboard moves with the same coiled tension, like a spring wound too tight. Bohm has seen the reports. He's read the intelligence memos. He knows what waits out there. Liberty ships. Dozens of them. Ships that shouldn't matter, ships the Kriegsmarine laughed at, now clogging every shipping lane. Ugly ships. Simple ships. Endless ships. Bring us up, Bohm orders. I want eyes on their formation. Minutes later, the periscope slips above the surface, slicing through the freezing black water. Bohm presses his eye to the scope. He sees shadows first, massive, looming shapes etched against the darkness. A tanker. A freighter. Another Liberty ship. 5 more behind it. All moving in grim, relentless unison. Then his breath catches. There are 2 columns of Liberty ships. And beyond them, a third. Dozens. It looks like an iron migration. He whispers, so many. Behind him, Oberleutnant Fritz Werger mutters, We don't have enough torpedoes for this. Bohm lowers the scope. His face is pale in the dim red lights. No one does. Above the surface, aboard the SS John Walker, the bridge crew fights the wind as they scan the horizon. The ship shudders with each wave, but her engines push her on. Seaman Jacob Merrill, barely 19, grips the icy rail, knuckles white. "Think they're out there, sir?" he asks. His officer, Ensign Clark, nods toward the darkness. "They're always out there. But remember, there's more of us now." A distant boom rolls across the water. Merrill jolts. "Was that?" "No hit," Clark says quickly. "Escort depth charges. Keeping the wolves honest." Another explosion echoes. The convoy steadies its line. None of the merchants break formation. Below the waves, in U-230, the depth charges thunder. The hull creaks. Dust falls from the overhead piping. Bohm grips the chart table, jaw tight. "They know we're here." Werger shouts over the reverberations, "Sir, should we disengage?" Bohm opens his mouth to answer. Another depth charge detonates. The lights flicker. The boat shakes violently, groaning like a wounded animal. Bohm steadies himself. "No," he says. "We attack." Werger stares. "Even if we only sink one? One ship?" Bohm nods slowly, eyes hollow. "One ship bought us a month in 1940. Now it buys us a minute." Back on the surface, the John Walker holds her course. Inside the engine room, men wipe sweat from their brows despite the cold. Pipes rattle. The engines thump without elegance, without refinement. But they run. Always they run. On the bridge, Clark watches the convoy's lights ahead and behind, Liberty ships stretching to the limit of visibility. "This," he says quietly, "is how we win. Not by being stronger. Not by being faster. Just by being here." Merrill swallows, the truth settling in his chest like a warm coal. "They can't sink us all," the boy says. Clark's voice is firm. "No, they can't." Down in the black Atlantic, after an hour of cat and mouse, U-230 slips away, damaged, shaken, but alive. Bohm leans in the command chair, staring at nothing. Werger speaks softly. "What now?" Bohm exhales slowly, like a man surrendering to gravity. "Now." He closes his eyes. "Now we accept the truth. We cannot sink faster than they can build." The words hang in the cramped steel coffin of the U-boat. Above him, in the lee of the storm, the Liberty ships churn eastward, ugly, graceless, and unstoppable, carrying the war effort on welded backs, proving with every mile that industrial time itself has become a weapon. A weapon Germany cannot defeat. And as the convoy pushes onward toward Europe, the Battle of the Atlantic quietly shifts. Not with a single explosion, not with a decisive clash, but with the grinding realization deep in the heart of every U-boat captain. The era of the hunter is ending. The era of the assembly line has begun.